greetings to everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Anne, our next panelist. Anne Nichols is the coordinator of the Edmund Rice Network in England, a role that she took on in 2017, and she's based in Manchester. She's a former language teacher who taught for 8 years at St Mary's in Crosby, which is an Edmund Rice school near Liverpool. Anne has a passion for social justice. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and care for our environment are particular issues of concern for her. And she's promoted awareness of these through the Edmund Rice schools in England. She's also the co-founder of the Connecting Classrooms Initiative, an Edmund Rice Education Beyond Borders program, which links global Edmund Rice schools around the Sustainable Development Goals. The highlighting of women in leadership in the Edmund Rice Network around the world is also a project that she's currently promoting. Anne has been active in raising awareness about COP26, and she will share with us today her work in promoting the engagement of students in COP26 and in the Conference of Youth, which is scheduled to commence in Glasgow at the end of this week ahead of the COP26 meeting. So welcome, over to you, Anne, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Brian, for that introduction, and thank you to everybody here for inviting me to be a panelist. I'm delighted to join you all. I've been asked to talk to you about the engagement of our students, our Edmund Rice schools, in both the Conference of Youth 16 and COP26, and also the harnessing, I suppose, of the energy of the youth and the many schools that we have in our Edmund Rice Global Network. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Hopefully we can see that.
Yes, sir, perfectly.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the run-up to our engagements in Conference of Youth and COP26. So I would say that our journey began in earnest in 2019 when we really started to drive the raising of awareness of the SDGs, encouraging all schools in the Edmund Rice England network to be involved in making active changes to achieving a more sustainable lifestyle, and especially involving them in advocacy campaigns about the climate emergency. Having a coordinated social justice action plan, not only for Edmund Rice England, but with our region, the North and the Republic of Ireland too, really coordinated our efforts in the schools to be able to easily join campaigns, work together and understand why our efforts were so important to be the change that we wanted to see in the world around caring for our common home. We decided on a big drive to rid the schools and hopefully people's day-to-day lives of the unnecessary use of single-use plastics. As you can see, we harnessed the great power of work that was already being done by peace and justice groups, such as the one featured in Ard School Namara in Tramore, and they shared how they had run their campaign, and they shared their infectious passion with our schools via our Heads Conference, and we worked with our ERI youth ambassadors. We then involved the wider schools network, again using our contacts in schools through ERI-BB. So we had schools in Zimbabwe, South Africa and South America soon got on board with the simple drive that we all needed to make in terms of getting use of single-use plastics if we could. So we're starting to see that we harnessed a lot of social media and we used our contacts. Moving into 2020, you can see the SDG wheel was incorporated into our logos as a symbol of our own commitment. And we used opportunities such as our school staff conference training day to work on making the SDGs lived realities in our schools. We commissioned our head teachers in front of their staff to make this pledge and commit to more sustainable models of practice in their own schools. And we do thank Brian Bond here for his videos that he made to inform our staff about the need for urgency around engaging in climate activism. Working with student voice as well, we involved our youth ambassadors, of course, through ERI, but we also used the platform of our annual Schools Council conference to engage the body of pupils in ensuring that the SDGs are being committed to and lived out in schools. This conference involves other guest schools as well who took on the commitments, and we involved our partner agency, which is the Liverpool World Centre, in our formation programmes. Moving forward, we have 5 schools working together globally through the British Council Connecting Classrooms project, encouraging global learning around the SDGs, and our chosen programme is about waste reduction. 3 UK Edmund Rice schools, along with a school in India and South Africa, have been working together on joint projects to tackle waste in their schools, as well as local communities since last summer, and they will continue until the end of this year. One advantage of this is that the teachers receive continued professional development training opportunities as partner schools in both global education and in sustainability. And you can see some of the ongoing projects here, some photographs of the work that's being done in our schools around sustainability. As Brian mentioned in the introduction, on the back of the British Council project, we have our own ERI-BB, Edmund Rice Education Australia, and Edmund Rice England Global Classroom Partners scheme, where we have 44 schools working around sustainable development goals and joint projects together across many of our international regions. We run what is known as our student leadership programme across our schools in the UK and Ireland, and 2 of the modules on these are on eco-justice and SDGs. One of the things we ask our students to do is have international discussions. We had an international discussion last year with schools in the US around climate change and environmental issues. Now, from the back of this, the staff and students both asked for or clamoured for really more education on these topics. So responding to the need that was requested by the staff and students, I organised 3 conferences, online conferences known as Why Francis Met Greta, and along with ERI and Tracker, Loud Alto Sea Animators, we delivered 3 educational climate change conferences, as I say, online conferences designed for staff and students in school. Mostly teachers responded to this. But again, we definitely, this is where we really started to raise awareness of COP26. One of our guest contributors to this was Corinne Fagaray from Edmund Rice Justice Centre in Australia, and Corinne runs the Pacific Calling Partnership. She raised awareness with our schools about the climate emergency and the impact on the Pacific Islands, the people, and of course the environment there. So on the back of this, we decided to apply for a stand at COP26 in the Green Zone. Now the Green Zone is the events area at COP26 where many events are held for public and for group people who, you know, participants can go and have a look at all of these different stands. We applied for this and we intended to represent Pacific Calling Partnership at COP26. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a stand at COP26, the response being that they had been absolutely overwhelmed by requests for a stand, but we didn't give up in engaging our schools and students in COP26. Since our application, we decided that instead we would be running workshops for schools. We've run many workshops for all of our schools, and we have engaged them in lobbying our MPs. They have a wealth of resources, they have letters and postcards, and we have absolutely bombarded our local authorities and MPs in terms of their own commitments to climate change and the demands that they would be making from both local councillors and of course from the global policymakers. And we did this not just on behalf of small individual groups in our schools, but as an Edmund Rice global network. You can see there probably at the top of the screen the FCJs I'm involved with working with many of the religious orders in education in the UK, and I ran conferences for the FCJ student leadership on earth justice as well, where we also wrote and informed them about COP26 and wrote many lobbying letters. So we've spread much further than our own network in terms of the work around raising awareness about student involvement in COP26. Some of you may recognise, I hope you do, because it means it will have been effective, that we have had a campaign for the last 6 months with ERI, which came out of conversations with many of our brothers and network team who have become Loud Out to Sea animators, and our province spirituality team. So we have had this action campaign running for the last 6 months, encouraging campaign action, lifestyle change, and of course a reflection, harnessing the will and the spirit of not only small pockets around the global network, but if all of us work together on these campaign actions, we can make a bigger impact, we hope. Our students have continued to collaborate around climate justice on the back of working towards COP26, and they were recently involved in, I'm sure what Steve is going to talk about in a little while, the Earth Summit just a couple of weeks ago, and the Fridays for Future on Friday. Some of our students have been involved in that, the same students who are campaigning around COP26. We've also involved our schools in advocacy for COP26. If they weren't able to attend COP26, then in terms of their demands and their commitments, their promises, we've collaborated on many different campaigns, but one of the most successful has been this one, the Promise to the Planet. We've had students making promises to the planet. These leaves are actually displayed at COP26, or they can be displayed online. And we've had students collaborating with other schools right across the network in order to write the leaves and have them put up at COP26. So on one side of these leaves, you do a promise, and on the other one is a demand. So this has been a really big drive. Many, many schools have been involved in this. There has been some skepticism, of course, around these COP summits, and we have this well-known phrase from Greta Thunberg about all the talk around COP26 and the talk from the policymakers as being blah blah blah. But I would like to echo the words of Vanessa. It's time, it's time, it's time. We've definitely engaged our students in the fact that this time, it seems to me that COP26 is the climate summit that everybody is really listening to. And I would particularly say in terms of the voice of youth, it is being heard because of people like Vanessa and Greta. But our students do feel very much empowered by these Youth for Climate leaders. And I've encouraged them to follow Youth for Climate, which was an event a couple of weeks ago, or about 4 weeks ago, on the run up to COP26, to listen to these inspirational youth climate activists. I would say that these are some of the things that the students obviously have been worried about, but what we've tried to do in our workshops with students is turn their climate anxiety into positive action. We have a lot of anxiety around the climate with our students, and also they feel quite helpless. So the involvement in Conference of Youth and COP26 is a way of harnessing that and changing that anxiety, if you like, into positivity. So I'll just say a little bit about what Conference of Youth is. I know Brian mentioned it just in his introduction there. So Conference of Youth is the 16th time this has happened. It's a climate change conference, exactly as it says there, for youth, which precedes COP26. So it'll be happening between the 28th and the 30th of October. And the UN Climate Change Conference of Youth is an event under the banner of YouNGO, the official youth constituency of the United Nations framework for the Convention on Climate Change. Because it precedes and feeds into COP26 is the best way to harness the youth voice to be really heard by policymakers at COP26. So youth organisations and also individuals were invited by a Conference of Youth to create and write a youth statement that is then synthesised into a Voice for Youth statement delivered to policymakers at COP26. So in the Edmund Rice Network Global ERIBB network, I organised some meetings and invited our schools to write a statement. We've done this and we've submitted it. We wrote it and submitted it through the UK regional coordinator, but it does represent many global regions. The process of writing the statement has been an extremely valuable experience for our schools. Collaborating on the process, we met twice. We met for about 4 hours. The statement has very strict guidelines, so students had to be well informed. They had to do research into facts and scientific evidence about climate change and the impacts in their own countries and areas. They had to write commitments and outline what their own communities are doing in terms of climate change. There's also a large section of the statement that requires young people to write what they want to see done by local authorities. These demands have to be smart demands, so time-bound and scientific and realistic. And they also demand these from global policymakers as well as local policymakers. The most interesting fact, I think, or the thing that came out of it for me, was that the main demand that all the students made was around education and awareness about environmental degradation needing to be improved globally and locally. We had schools from the United States, from across India, Uruguay, the UK, and also we were delighted to be joined by the Brother Manolo Center, the Center for Working Children in Cochabamba, Bolivia, and they all contributed brilliantly to the preparation and the writing of this statement. We opened a Jamboard, which is an online whiteboard, so students could continue to feed in obviously all of their demands and their commitments and their problems, because they needed some time to go away and research these effectively. We had interpretation and translation, so we delivered the sessions in 2 languages, and we needed supporting signatures when we submitted our statement. You can see some of these supporting signatures here, which absolutely overwhelmed me. I know the passion and the power and the commitment of our students globally to the climate crisis, but we were absolutely flooded by many, many, many schools who had not participated in the preparation of the statement, but all wanted to contribute their support. So we have submitted something like 1,500 individual signatures from different schools across Africa, South America, Australia, UK, Ireland, right across the regions, really. All schools are certificated, and the individual were recognised, and they've really responded well to being recognised for writing this statement. So our statement is submitted, and hopefully some of the voices of our young people will go directly to these policymakers. This is what we're hoping. We will take concrete copies of our statement when we are lucky enough. We have some tickets to go to COP26 on the 8th of November. But before that, on the 5th of November, according to the presidential programme, it's Youth Empowerment Day at COP26. So please look out on social media. We'll be engaging all of our schools. We'll be plugging away with our own demands that we've taken from our statement, and we will bombard social media that day, the Youth Empowerment Day at COP26, and make sure students and schools are involved in that. As I said, we have tickets to go to COP26, but before we do, there are UK regional COP26 events. And luckily enough, you can attend these in person, or you can attend them online. So we're encouraging our students and staff and anybody involved in the network to also attend the regional roadshows around the UK that are happening around COP26. So when we actually go to COP26, which is the 8th of November, we're taking a group of 12 students. Tickets, as you can imagine, were very limited, but we are there on the 8th, and these are some of the events that we will be attending, and then of course reporting back on. And you can see that it was really timely that we managed to get in on a day when we were looking at the Pacific Islands, which was the project we wanted to go and represent anyway, using the SDGs, which will be fantastic for our students and staff. We are looking at human rights and climate impacts in Latin America. So in that way, we hope to be representing the schools that have contributed so well from the Latin American region. Future of green engineering and films and agents for change. And we are also really excited about the event, which is Youth Are Leading, the Ripple Effect, which is exactly what we're trying to promote with all of our schools and students, that their voices are important and are being heard. So after we have attended COP26, what are our hoped for outcomes? Well, obviously we have a youth statement now that we can look back to and we can follow up on. We will make sure there is a report to schools and the network of the COP outcomes. So we'll be looking closely at them in harnessing the power of our youth ambassadors in those statements. And also we will continue to involve as many groups from our schools as we can to continue, not just in terms of what's happened in COP26, but generally to keep on with our collective action for change around the climate emergency. So this is what we are currently working on, that we have school and group action plans, so that we're not working as one person, but that we are collaborating. We're continuing to think global, but act locally. So we're encouraging all of our schools to really engage with their own behaviour in terms of what do they do with energy, waste. Classroom partnerships are so important in terms of realising the difficulties that are happening in different parts of our global network. We're continuing to promote personal actions and personal behaviour change, and we will continue to promote advocacy campaigns in terms of our climate emergency. That is the end of my presentation. I think the main comment that I'd like to bring forward is that how do we engage more schools and also marginalised students or children? And I think that's through the regions, through the regional coordinators, through the advocacy coordinators, and through ERI-BB. I would encourage all schools to sign up to the Global Classroom Partner Scheme, because in that way you find out what's happening. Look in the ERI newsletters and follow social media, and that's how we're going to engage even more students. But thank you very much for the opportunity.